Chapter 11. No Song for Axes. The casualty line smelled of vinegar, wet wool, and iron. Bram had thought blood would smell sharper after a while. It did not. It settled into everything. Bandages. Mud. Coat cuffs. Breath. The wooden boards laid over the ditch. His own hands. No matter how hard he rubbed them against wet grass. He stood beside a barrel of boiled cloth and did not know why he was there. People moved around him with purpose. Healers cut sleeves. Runners carried names. A chaplain with shaking fingers marked foreheads and whispered prayers too quickly. Meredith sat on an overturned crate with Alara's sword across her knees, cleaning the blade, as if steel could still be protected from what had happened. Saren stood near the tent flap, one glove burned black. Face washed clean except for a line of soot under her left eye. Cale kept beside her without speaking. Dane sat on the ground with his splinted wrist and an arrow across his lap, staring at nothing with a fury too tired to stand. No one said Alira's name. That was the first theft. The second was how quickly people learned to step around the space she had occupied. At breakfast, no one sat on the crate where she had cleaned her sword. In the gear line, a recruit moved her spare whetstone from the shelf, then put it back so fast it clicked against the wood. Dane started a joke about elves arriving without breathing, stopped after the first word, and stared at his own boots, as if they had betrayed him. Bram had thought absence would be empty. It was not. It crowded everything. It crowded the smallest tasks worst of all. When the quartermaster called for blades to be oiled, someone set out one rag too many. When the evening watch was named, a pause opened after Meredith's squad. The officer's tongue still expected another answer. At the soup line, the cook ladled a portion into a bowl, glanced at the space beside Saren, and dumped it back into the pot with a muttered curse that fooled no one. Bram found Alira's practice strap under the bench where she had made him sit, until his shoulders stopped trying to do his knees work. It was only a strip of leather, dark with oil and rain, pierced twice for buckles. Nothing holy, nothing a song would keep. He picked it up anyway. For a while he held it in both hands and remembered the exact boredom of repeating one motion badly. Then less badly, then badly again after tiredness made him proud. He remembered wanting the drill to end. He remembered Alira saying, again, as if the word had been carved before either of them were born. The memory made him angry at himself for every time he had wished her silent. He folded the strap once, then twice, and tucked it inside his coat where no one could ask what he was carrying. Bram walked to the report tent. Standing still made his skin feel too tight. Inside, the world had already become columns. Name, rank, unit, circumstance, recoverable equipment, witness. Phil made neat boxes around things that had not been neat while happening. Oren stood over the table. His face looked older than it had at Alderfall, though only weeks had passed. Harker sat with his arm in a sling, dictating losses to a clerk who wrote fast and blotted little. That bothered Bram. Blots would have made sense.
Thorn Alira, attached blade screen. Circumstance, killed during withdrawal action.
No.
The clerk's pen stopped. Harker looked up first.
Alder.
That's not what happened.
His voice sounded calm. That frightened him. He had expected grief to come out broken or loud. Instead, it came out with the same flat edge he used when telling Tobin not to step on rotten ice. A practical warning. A thing said when the world had become dangerous in a specific place and someone needed to stop walking there. Oren's eyes closed for half a breath.
Outside.
No?
The word came out flat. A tree split straight through. Harker's face tightened.
This is not the place.
Where is?
The clerk stared at his paper. Brahm stepped closer.
She crossed the lane for the runners. She held the first spell. She pushed me out of the second. She died after we walked into open ground when I told you what the ford needed.
No one moved. Oren's voice went low.
You told us the risk. You did not command the field.
Neither did the map.
Harker stood too fast and winced when his sling pulled.
Enough.
Write what she did.
The report is not a grave song.
Then it's a lie.
The air changed. Even Brahm felt it through the heat in his head. Dane would have called it the moment before someone smart stopped talking. Brahm had never been good at that moment. Oren came around the table. He did not grab Brahm. That would have been easier to fight. He stood in front of him and spoke so quietly the clerk had to lean away to pretend not to hear.
If I write that a dead soldier crossed an exposed lane against formation to save runners and a conscript, command calls it breach of order. If I write that the ridge plan failed under conditions you named, Harker's superior calls it insubordination from my tent and uses it to bury the lesson with me. If I write cleanly, I can still move men tomorrow with the truth in my orders.
Brahm stared at him. Oren's jaw worked once.
I am not asking you to like that.
I hate it.
Good. Hate has energy. Spend it carefully.
Brahm looked past him to the clerk's line of ink. Killed during withdrawal action.
She had a brother?
Oren did not answer.
He sang badly on purpose.
The tent seemed to shrink around the words. Harker looked away first. The clerk's hand tightened around the pen until his knuckles paled. Brahm saw then that the clerk was young. Not as young as Brahm, maybe, but young enough that his beard came in unevenly along the jaw. Young enough to hate the pen in his hand and keep writing after someone told him writing was how order survived. Young enough that if Brahm threw the table over, the clerk would remember him as the reason names became harder to write, not easier. The anger had nowhere clean to go. Brahm pointed at the report.
Where does that go?
No one had a box for it. Outside, rain began again. Soft at first, then harder. Drumming on canvas with the same patient hands that had drummed on the lean-to roof when Alira talked about white trees. Brahm turned before anyone dismissed him. Marith was still cleaning Alira's sword when he came out. The blade was already clean. She ran the cloth along it again anyway.
They wrote it wrong.
Reports are made to travel farther than grief.
That's supposed to make it better? No.
He sank onto the crate beside her without asking. She did not move away. For a while they listened to rain and wounded men trying not to sound wounded.
She should have let me die.
Marith's cloth stopped. When she spoke, her voice stayed formal, but the form had cracks in it.
Don't make her final choice small enough to fit your guilt.
Bram's throat closed. He wanted to argue. Arguing was easier than understanding. He wanted to say guilt was not small. It was enormous. It filled the ditch and the field and the sky above the tents. It had more room in it than any report. More teeth than any enemy line. If guilt was small, then what was this thing pressing against his ribs hard enough to make breathing feel stolen? But Marith had not said guilt was weak. She had said Alira was larger. Bram looked at the sword across Marith's knees. Clean now. Too clean. Rain beaded along the fuller and clung there, each drop trembling when the camp moved.
What did she want?
Marith's hand tightened on the cloth.
Before?
Bram nodded. After was too large a place. For a while Marith said nothing. The camp supplied its own cruel answers. Wounded men. Wet canvas. Names called from one tent to another.
A small command.
Marith said at last. Bram looked at her.
Not glory, not court rank. A patrol, a road, a border village no one important remembered unless timber taxes went missing.
Marith ran her thumb along the sword guard.
She said soldiers who remembered being hunted should stand where frightened people first see an army.
Bram swallowed. That sounded like a lyra in a way that hurt worse than praise.
Did she tell you that? No.
She told almost no one.
Why tell me?
Marith looked toward the report tent.
Someone will try to turn her into a useful shape. A loyal refugee. A tragic elf. A brave correction and a poor plan. You are angry enough to refuse the easy shapes. That is dangerous, but it is also a kind of guard duty.
Bram touched the folded strap inside his coat. Guard duty. He could do that much. The skirmish alarm sounded before he could answer. One horn, short, close. Bodies moved everywhere. Healers shouted. Men reached for swords, bows, anything with an edge or string. Dane stumbled upright with his arrow. Seren came away from the tent flap, burned glove already on her hilt. Kale's face went blank with battle readiness. Bram looked at his axe where it leaned against the barrel. There was still blood in the wood grain near the wedge. For one breath, he did not know whose. Then he took it. The skirmish came through rain and low brush, not a charge. A probing cut. 3 enemy soldiers trying to reach the supply carts while the camp still had its wounds open. They moved well. Too well for panic. Bram saw the nearest one when the soldiers slipped on the rain-cut ditch. Elf. Young-looking, though that meant little. Mud across one cheek. Helmet too large by half a finger. A short sword in hand and terror in the eyes. Before training covered it. Bram's anger found a face. He moved. The soldier recovered quickly, blade flashing, toward Bram's arm. Bram caught the strike on the axe haft, felt the shock, stepped inside, and drove his shoulder into the soldier's chest. Not elegant. Effective. They went down together in the ditch with rainwater bursting around them. The short sword vanished under mud. Bram landed on top. His axe head came up. The soldier froze. There were fights where thinking arrived late and found the work already done. Bram had known that at the cut bank. At the ford. Time did not speed. It widened. He could see the soldier's throat. He could see where to put the blade. He could see a lyra falling. The soldier said something in Elvish, fast and high. Bram did not understand it. He understood begging. His hands tightened. The axe was heavy in the right way. Familiar. Honest. It would fall if he let it. One motion. One answer. The rain would take the blood into the ditch, and no report would write that Bram Alder had killed grief when grief would not hold still. He imagined it too clearly. That was the shame of it. This was not the blur of the cut bank or village smoke. He saw the blade drop. saw the body stop being a threat, saw himself stand and feel, for one bright, filthy heartbeat, that something had balanced. One elf. One elf. One uniform for one green coat. A child's arithmetic scratched into mud with a weapon. Then the arithmetic would end, and Alara would still be gone. His arms did not care. The soldier's eyes squeezed shut. That made Bram angrier.
Look.
The soldier opened his eyes.
Look at me.
Please.
The soldier said in Von Mark, accent thick.
I yield. I yield.
You came in with a sword.
I yield. I yield.
She yielded?
The soldier flinched as if the words were another blade.
Who?
Bram pressed the axe beard under his jaw. Not cutting. Not yet.
Alara Thorn.
The name changed the soldier's face. Not recognition exactly. Fear finding a deeper room.
Thorn?
Bram's vision narrowed.
You know that name.
No. Only stories.
Stories?
The soldier swallowed against the axe.
Dissenters. The Grove. I was a child.
You're still a child.
The soldier laughed once, broken and breathless.
Not to them.
Bram wanted that not to matter. He wanted the uniform to be all of him. The gray cloak. The realm badge at his throat. The side that had burned Alderfall roofs, marked Stormwood, called Conquest Stewardship, killed Alara with clean distance and cleaner words. The soldier's right hand moved. Bram nearly struck. Then he saw it. The hand was empty, palm up in the mud. Calluses cut across the base of the fingers. Old rope burns. A half-healed split near the thumb from work. Not sword practice. The nails were broken short. A hand that had held tools. Bram's axe trembled. The soldier felt it and started whispering doctrine like a prayer learned in fear.
The long-lived steward. The brief-lived obey. Disorder consumes the young peoples. The realm preserves.
Stop.
I yield. I yield.
Stop talking.
The doctrine stopped. The fear stayed. Behind Bram, steel rang. Saren shouted for someone to bind the archer. Dane cursed. A body hit water. The skirmish was still happening, but this ditch had become its own little world of rain, mud, axe, throat. Alara had said not all elves. She had not needed to. She had stood in Von Mark Green with her sword and her white tree grief, and made the lesson breathe. This soldier was not Alara. He was not Letharian either. That should not have mattered. It mattered anyway. Bram lifted the axe half an inch. His arms screamed to finish the motion, not muscles, something uglier. He lowered the axe away from the throat and drove the blade into the mud beside the soldier's ear. The soldier went boneless under him. Bram grabbed the front of his cloak.
Name.
Shiro. My name is Cyril.
If you reach for a weapon, I will not be kind twice.
Ciarl nodded too fast. Bram dragged him up by the cloak and slammed him against the ditch wall.
Bind him.
Kale appeared at the edge of the ditch, rain running down his face. His sword was bloody near the tip. For a moment he looked from Bram to Cyril to the axe buried in mud.
You spared him.
Bram could not read the tone.
He yielded.
They do that when frightened.
So do we.
Kale's mouth closed. He jumped down and bound Cyril's hands with a field cord, movements sharp but not cruel. Cyril kept watching the camp ridge, even when no officers stood there. Watching for someone. Behind him. Someone who owned fear better than Bram did. The skirmish ended as abruptly as it had begun. One enemy dead near the carts. One escaped into brush. Cyril bound in the ditch and shaking so hard the cord tapped against his belt buckle. Bram pulled the axe from the mud. The blade was filthy, not red. He did not feel clean. Cyril sagged as Kale hauled him toward the guard line. Halfway up the ditch, he stumbled and caught Bram's sleeve with bound hands. Bram almost struck him for touching. Cyrell's voice came thin as rainwater.
The marked wood was never supposed to be burned.
Bram went still.
What?
Cyrell's eyes rolled, fear and exhaustion taking him under.
Not burned. Counted.
Then he fainted against Kale's shoulder. Kale swore and held him upright. Bram stood in the ditch with rain running down his neck, and Alera's name still raw in his mouth. Water ran off the axe blade and left the edge dark with mud. They put Cyrell under guard in a grain tent. It was the only place left with 3 sides and no holes large enough for a frightened prisoner to crawl through. Bram watched from outside while Marith checked the knots on the binding cord. She did not look at him until she was done.
He will live.
Good.
The word came out too late to sound true. Marith heard that. Of course she did.
Mercy does not require you to enjoy it.
I don't.
Good. Enjoyed mercy is often vanity.
Bram rubbed rain from his face with the back of his hand. Mud streaked his sleeve. The axe hung at his side, blade washed clean by weather. He had not bloodied it when he could have. That should have meant something bright. It did not. Inside the tent, Cyrell stirred and whispered in his own language. Not doctrine this time. A name, maybe, or a prayer. Bram could not tell, and not knowing kept the soldier human in a way Bram resented. Kale came up beside him, quiet for once.
If command asks, he yielded before you struck.
Bram looked at him. Kale's face stayed forward.
That is accurate enough.
Why?
If they think you hesitated from grief, they will call you unstable. If they think you spared intelligence, they will call you useful.
I didn't spare intelligence.
No, you spared a boy.
He walked away before Bram could answer.